Hey everybody, it's ChicagoCharlie, and I'm doing a deck profile on an archetype that is insanely good. I mean, I've been playing it for a bit, and it comes at you from every angle. I mean, this is the deck that I will be playing probably for the rest of my. I'm gonna have this deck together for the rest of my Yu-Gi-Oh! As long as I play the game, because I just love how this deck plays. It's so vicious. Well, I'm gonna start off the deck profile. Satellaknight, Unkalhai. This is the Foolish Burial of the deck. He's a really good card. Before he wasn't as good because you didn't have as many targets, like before they announced everything that was coming out. And now that there are actually five, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven that you run in the main deck. He's a much more viable card. But you only play him at two because you don't want him to get cloggy, and you can just keep getting him back, so you don't want too many of them. Altair, Satellaknight Altair. This is the bread. This is the bread of the deck. I'll get to the butter in a second. This guy, when he's summoned anyway, you can special summon a Tellarknight monster from your graveyard, and its effect it comes out in face-up defense position. If you activate this effect, monsters you control other than Tellarknight monsters cannot attack for the rest of the turn. So you have to be sure to only bring out Tellarknight Xyz monsters that you're gonna battle with. So you have to play this card smarter than you would have to normally if you're just like spamming the field with monsters. You have to make sure when you make your attack play, it's with Satellaknight monsters. This one, Sirius, Satellaknight, Sirius, you'd only run him at one because he's like a pot of avarice, really. He doesn't really do much outside of that, and there's not times like all these monsters can be recycled. They can all be put back in deck. They can all you will never deck out in this deck essentially because there's so many cards that let you just put things back in deck, and Surge is so consistent, it's ridiculous. You don't really need to run too many of the Xyz monsters because they're also recyclable, so it's such a good deck. So you only run him at one. Satellaknight Deneb. This card is the Stratos. This card is so good. I mean, there's so many plays that this card opens up just by having him in your graveyard. You don't even really need him in your hand. If he's in your graveyard, he does much more work than anywhere else. Satellaknight Sham. I'm only running two. I might drop it down to one, honestly, because this card, he really does nothing but burn your opponent. So I'm probably gonna drop him to one when the stuff comes out. But at two, he's fine. He's not great. He's not bad. Just for the simple fact that he burns your opponent, that's pretty good. 1,000 damage. But you got to remember, each one of these guys is once per turn. That's why there's a lot of cards that you have to run just because they're once per turn. The next one is Satellaknight Procyon, or Procyon. I think it's Sion. If this card is summoned, you can send one Tellarknight monster from your hand to the graveyard, draw one card. This is insanely good, but if later I decide that this is more needed, I'd probably cut the second Sham and max him at 3. He's a really good card because he lets you filter and get your staples. It does not matter if you have these guys in the grave. They all go off no matter where they're played from. Satellaknight Vega, you have to max this at 3. I'm hoping this comes out super and it's not like secret or something stupid. This one, you can only use the effect once per turn. If this card is summoned, you can special summon one Tellarknight monster from your hand. It's more ideal to have this in your grave. That way, well, actually, it doesn't matter where you have them. but it is more ideal to have him in your grave so you don't lose more cards from hand, I guess. But it doesn't really matter as long as you combo it with Altair. Like you summon him from grave, you summon Altair, summon him from grave, special this and pitch another card to grave, or special this and search a card. It doesn't matter what you do. One obligatory honest because it's honest and it's a light archetype, so you have to run it. But really, you don't need it. You do not need it at all. Triple maxi just to stop decks from going off, and one Rhoda because they're all warriors. Rhoda is too good in this deck. You have so many options, so many options. It's so good. If Rhoda ever goes to 2, this would be tier 1, but Rhoda will never go to 2, so that's fine. Soul Charge. Now this is a card that I really don't even see necessary in the deck, but I'm just testing it out, so I put it in the deck profile just for this for shits and giggles. But because off of one summon you could potentially get 3 monsters to the field, you don't really need Soul Charge. It really just gets in the way. Like when I was testing it against this Lightsworn deck, every time I was Soul Charge, I regretted it. Because I would do nothing but lose life points, and I wouldn't really capitalize on it by putting any damage on board. So I might cut this card altogether. It's good in a lot of decks. Don't get me wrong, but in this deck, it's not that great. It's really only good in a pinch. So if you must run it at 1. 2 MSTs. I'd probably cut the Soul Charges for more MSTs or something disruptive. Pot of Duality is bad in this deck. It's so consistent it doesn't need Pot of Dualities, because Pot of Duality would actually slow the deck down, because all these monsters trigger when they're summoned, and most of the ones that you want to summon every turn, specials. Like you want to go Altair, special Deneb, search. Altair, special Vega, Vega, special Deneb, search. Altair, special Unkalhai, pitch to grave. Something like that. You always want to set up your hand or your grave off of these cards. And the great thing about all of these is they never miss timing, because it's an if, not a when. It's an if you can, not a when you can, so it never misses timing. So when JD blows up something, you can call the Haunted and bring your stuff back. You'll still get your search and your special, and you can make some great plays. This card, I'm going to bump this at 3. If I do take out the Soul Charges, this will definitely be at 3. It's such an amazing card. It's called Satellaknight. It's called Star-Crossed Satellaknights. You can activate one Star-Crossed Satellaknight once per turn. You can only activate 1 per turn. Target 1 Tellarknight monster you control. That's the cost to target. Special summon 1 Tellarknight monster with a different name from your deck, and if you do, shuffle that target into the deck. As long as that special summon monster is face up, you cannot special summon monsters except Tellarknights. So there is a way that you can bypass this by going into an Xyz play and then going into another Xyz play, so that, like, let's say I have 5 monsters and I use this. I take the one monster that I special summoned and overlay for a Tellarknight, then I take the other 2 and go Diamond Dire or Ragnar Zero or something different. Basically, that's how you bypass the downside of this card. But one upside is your opponent cannot respond with Torrential. Your opponent cannot respond with Bottomless, because they can warning it though, of course. Because the way this card works is it targets the monster as cost, and during resolution it special summons 1 Tellarknight monster with a different name, and then if you do get the special summon off, you shuffle the target into deck. So Bottomless will miss its timing, because I know that's not the correct term, but Bottomless won't be able to activate because, or maybe it is. Bottomless won't be able to activate because the monster was shuffled in deck, and so your opponent cannot respond to the summon, which makes this card so good. If it's secret, I will be surely upset, but maybe it won't be. If it's rare, Like, I think it's rare in the OCG. It'll be fantastic. One bottomless, two reckless greeds. I'm testing out the reckless greeds. I don't know how I feel about it. It is good because theoretically you don't really need to draw as long as you get your grave set up and your hand set up correctly every end phase. You don't really need to draw, so it's not that bad of a card in the deck. Because, like, let's say I reckless greed at end phase. As long as I can make a play at the end phase to search a monster, then you don't really need to draw. And there are monsters in this deck that let you draw anyway. 3 trap stuns. I'm running 3 trap stuns right now. I'm testing it out because I think that this deck, like, if your opponent has something to stop you from making your push plays and bouncing everything on their side of the field or popping cards on their side of the field, then it can be very detrimental. Like, if you end up having no monsters in hand and they torrential you on your 3rd monster coming out, even though your 3rd monster coming out should always be a search or a pitch or a draw, it's still, like, if they do something to mess that up, then you're in a very bad spot. So trap stun at the start of your turn and then just going off bouncing all their cards is, like, too good. But, like, there's sometimes when, like, I just side this out completely, all the trap stuns completely, and the deck still runs smoothly. 1 compulsory evacuation device. I'm thinking about taking this out for a torrential, because a bottomless really screwed me over, and if it wasn't compulse, then, and if it was torrential, I would have been able to blow up my monster and get a special. But it was compulse, so I'm gonna cut compulse most likely. 2 Call the Haunteds. This card is so good, and the fact that it's at 3 is insane. I'm going to bump this to 3 because I do not need the soul charges. I'm gonna cut soul charge completely and just do 3 Call the Haunteds because this card makes this deck what it is. Well, it technically doesn't, but it makes this card better than what it is, which it already is great. So Call the Haunted makes it insane. Like, let's say you make your play. I mean, you make your play, make your monsters or whatever, set up your field, set up your hand, set up your grave, and then your opponent doesn't make a push play. He sets up his field, sets up his grave, sets up his hand. In phase, you can Call the Haunted, get a search off, Call the Haunted, bury a card, Call the Haunted, put 3 monsters on board. Let's imagine late game, you have a Vega and an Altair in hand and anything else in your grave. So Vega's in grave, you Call the Haunted Vega, special Altair, then Altair's effect, special any of them from grave. You have 3 monsters at end phase, then you draw for turn, then you overlay for 3, bounce every card on the field, so your Call the Haunted goes back to hand. Everything you did everything on their side of the field goes back to hand, and you get to pluck a card out of their hand. The deck, it's so consistent, it's ridiculous, and Call the Haunted needs to be ran at 3 in every build, or in the very least pinpoint guard. I was thinking about that, but then I realized the constraints where it has to be when your opponent declares an attack, and there's sometimes when your opponent doesn't do that. So Call the Haunted really is, like, insane. Oh, earlier I said he was bread. Call the Haunted is butter. Call the Haunted is butter by far. The Stratos is really good, but it's only good because of the cards around them. Like, if there was none that special from hand or grave, Deneb wouldn't be that good. Because what would you do? Deneb for a card that burns? Deneb for a card that pitches? I mean, these Vega and Altair, they make the deck, and Call the Haunted as well. It's so good. 1 Black Horn, because I like the card at 1. Warning at 1, of course, because you can only run 1, but I run it because it's at 1. Has a lot of utility. Two of these guys. I'm thinking of cutting this to 1. It's the Xyz monster for the deck. It's really good, and it's really easy to play. I know it says 3 level 4s. It's generic. That's what makes it great. it might actually end up being a staple just because it's a generic card that pops a card on the field. Any card, back row, your monster, anything. Um, I like this card, but you really only need it at 1 because of Sirius. 1 Ragna Zero, 1 Blade Armor Ninja for double attacks. Ragna Zero is really good too. Double attacks, obviously. I'm thinking of cutting this because a lot of times I go Altair, and Altair makes it so that other monsters can't attack. So, like, what's the point of a Blade Armor Ninja if nothing can attack it except my Satellaknights? So, I'm probably going to cut Blade Armor Ninja for another Satellaknight Tri-Veil. This card, it's not generic. It actually takes 3 Tellarknight monsters. If it was generic, it would be insane. You cannot special summon monsters during the turn you activate this card except Tellarknight monsters. So you gotta keep an eye out. I know there's a lot of builds that run other cards with the Tellarknights, but you don't need any of them. When this card is Exceed Summon, return all other cards on the field to the hand. That's on summon. So if they have bottomless, it doesn't matter. It's gonna resolve and return everything. Once per turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material, send 1 random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard while it has Xyz material, which happens most of the time, you can target 1 Tellarknight monster in your graveyard, special summon that target. This is so good. 1 Honor Arc because it's Honor Arc. Heartland Draco to finish quick game. To finish games where your opponent has 2,000 left. Diamond Dire Wolf to get rid of, like, let's say Light Imprisonings on the field, whatever. Paladynamo because they're all lights. Steel Swarm Roach for the Light Swarm matchup. I really think Steel Swarm Roach is going to make a comeback just because Light Swarms are around. Exciton Knight, Bujin Tsukiyomi. This is a really good card in this deck because it does not matter what Satellaknight monsters you send to the grave. So you can go this and pitch 4 if you wanted and draw 2. Just because it filters your deck, and you're going to get the Call of the Haunteds, hopefully, off of it if you run 3. And then you can just make plays from the grave. You do not need a hand to play this deck. As long as you have the Call of the Haunted set, you can just keep rinsing your grave. 1 Abyss Dweller. Number 86 Heroic Champion. I don't know when this card is coming out, but this card is insane in this deck. This is the reason why I ran Soul Charge, really, because of this monster. You can Soul Charge for 5 monsters, and literally your opponent can't do anything. Your opponent can't win the duel. I don't know what cards can out this guy, like what's an out to this guy, but if you use one or more Xyz monsters material, and they all have to be warriors, this card cannot be destroyed by battle. 2 or more, this card gains 1500 attack and defense, and these stack. So 1 or more, 2 or more, they all stack. So once you get 5, you get all effects. This card is unaffected by other card effects as 3 or more. 4 or more, your opponent cannot normal summon or special summon. 5 or more, once per turn, you can destroy all cards your opponent controls. Now, I don't know when this is coming out or what set. I don't know if it's in the next set, but this is an insane card. And it kind of looks like a Mermail to me. I don't know why. It kind of reminds me of Gaios, maybe the Trident. But it's a Warrior Dark Xyz monster. It's pretty good. And 1 Rhapsody and Berserk. I like this card because you can banish stuff from your opponent's grave. It makes JD a lot less good, especially when I can spam the field for 3 monsters, and then just make this and banish cards from their grave and still be able to attack. It's a really good card. So side deck, it doesn't really matter. It depends on your meta. That was my deck profile on the Satellaknights or Tellarknights. I don't know what they're going to be called when they come over here to OCG land. To TCG land. But thank you for watching. Comment, like, rate, and subscribe.